Mom, Dad, I humbly suggest you save some money and shop Amazon for back to school. It's for my growth, meaning my body's growing at an alarming rate. And clothes you buy me this year will be very small very soon. Plus, the clothes I love today will be out of style tomorrow. But at least your wallet doesn't have to be my fashion victim if you shop low prices for school at Amazon. Hopefully this is helpful. Amazon. Spend less, smile more.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today, I'm going to talk about why you should stop asking your wife so many questions before she loses her mind. And before we get to that, I must tell you to subscribe. My most recent subscriber episode was why it is not as nice a thing as you think to say that home should be a safe haven for the kids, before they go out into the world, which is hard. And you see from my voice what disorder, may be at play when people say things like that. But of course, to make sure that you know what I'm thinking about and to learn more about what I think about this topic, subscribe and you will get over 165 extra episodes, including that one. All right. So, a lot of men are very anxious. They have preoccupied attachment or they just have anxiety in general, which are different. Anxious attachment or preoccupied attachment is an attachment style related to, how your caregiver interacted with you when you were young. And for understanding more about that, you could go back to my attachment overview podcast and many other ones on attachment. But anxiety itself is a disorder. It could be generalized anxiety disorder. It could be social anxiety disorder. And that is not an attachment style. That's something different. And that is something where you worry all the time. So either one, whether you're worried about whether your wife loves you or you're just worried in general, many of those people ask a lot of questions. And they try to play it off like they're being a good partner, right? Oh, I'm just trying to see what you want me to do. I just don't want to do the wrong thing. But even by saying it like that, you can see how it's really more about the person. The person is scared about doing the wrong thing. They are scared that maybe they're going to make somebody upset. So it's about them. It's not about taking care of the partner. It's ostensibly that they want to do what the partner wants out of the goodness of their heart. But the reality is that they do not want to, catch any shit. They don't want any negative consequences, and they don't want to be, quote, wrong. And so the reality is that this is not about the wife. This is not about making things easy on her, because what's easy on her is for you just to do something. Now, if you say that she complains about everything you do, well, then that's a her problem. And then she seems like, she's got to work on herself. No shit. In a relationship that's not going well, two people have to work on themselves. But often, the woman is not really saying that ever. She's not saying that the things you do are wrong. Or she's doing it the same amount that, by chance. Like statistically, the amount that anybody would have a preference is how much she has it. So for example, this common dinner situation, picking where to go for dinner. I've talked about this. I literally have a podcast just on this. I cannot literally imagine this for my own self. So this one was, over the years, I've realized that this is truly a problem that many people have, is figuring out what to eat. I cook dinner, so that's how we eat. That's how we figure out what to eat. And when my husband and I go out, if he plans it, he plans it. And if I plan it, I plan it. And I've never in my life had a conversation about where we should eat. So, it doesn't matter, though, because this isn't about where you should eat. This is about textbook attachment interactions where two people are scared to say the wrong thing or to upset the other person, And also people, what I refer to as the cult of boundaries or preferences. This idea that everybody should get exactly what they want all the time, which is, of course, metastasizing in the age of DoorDash, where literally two people could get separate things. And so what does it really mean when a man asks a million questions? It means I don't want to get anything wrong. It means I am scared of your disapproval. And sometimes it means I'm scared of anybody's disapproval in the world, and I ask questions to everybody constantly, and it annoys everybody. So, you got to do a deep dive internally to figure out which of those is you. So let's do the dinner one. So he says, what do you want to eat for dinner? I think already he's wrong. I think already he starts out of the gate completely wrong. And he should say, I'm cooking dinner. You're going to love it, right? That's leading with confident momentum, right? Or can you make dinner? Or if they were sitting in couples counseling, we would sit and decide who makes dinner on what nights. And sometimes it's just one person that likes to cook. In fact, if I think about it, in most of the couples that I see, one person does the majority of the cooking, and it's not always the woman, by the way. Often it's the man. And so in those cases, it works out well. So I do all of the cooking for dinner, and my husband does all of the lunch making and, of making the children's lunches. And so we don't ask each other about anything, about that. I make breakfast. We make, if we go out to eat, as I said, you switch off who to pick. So you can fix this. By the way, the dinner thing is a solvable problem. And you could go to a couples counselor, or you could literally just say to your spouse, our life is too short to ever do this again. Let's figure out a system, and this is how our system is going to be. Or you could say, we are people that like sitting there and brainstorming about dinner, so instead of perceiving this as a deficit in our relationship, we're going to reframe it as a dinner discussion that we both enjoy. So that's, by the way, you can fix the dinner problem in either of those ways. But let's look at it, just analyze what goes on as a representation of the larger questioning issue that I'm talking about. So the guy says, where should we go to dinner? And she says, I don't know. I make decisions all day. I don't want to make a decision. And so he says, well, what about Chinese? And she says, we just had Chinese. And he says, well, what about Italian? And she says, the children don't like Italian. Why would you ever say that? And then he says, well, then what about sushi? And she says, well, that when I have sushi, my stomach hurts. And then he's like, well, then maybe I'll cook. And then she says, well, all right, but it's getting a little bit late, so you probably should have thought of that already. So in this conversation, what's going on? He is extremely anxious about upsetting her, and she's getting more and more annoyed. She's turning into her worst self. She's being as bitchy as possible because she's so irritated that he's asking her all these questions when probably she would have eaten any of that food if it was in front of her, right? But she feels that she has to manage everything, and he feels that no matter what sort of bird he brings as the cat to his owner, whatever sort of offering he makes, it's not good enough. This is because he feels anxious about the entirety of the relationship, quite honestly. There is not a situation where a happy couple does not have that interaction. Just so that just so that nobody has their head up their ass. A happy couple does not have an interaction where they snipe at each other and feel hopeless and feel like getting dinner is beyond them. That is not representative of a happy couple. Just like people who argue all the time, if they grew up in houses where you argue all the time, they think it's normal to argue all the time. If you grew up in houses where your parents were constantly irritated, bickering, and passive-aggressive, and shooting each other down, then you think that that's a normal interaction. Oh, it's so normal. It's a normal interaction. It's not normal. It was normal for your house. It is not normative and healthy. It is not a healthy interaction because you wouldn't talk like that to a friend. That's how you can always, by the way, you can check yourself on is this a normal way to act in terms of being happy and healthy? A lot of millions of people may do it, just like a lot of millions of people are depressed. But that doesn't mean that depression is a normative, healthy state, right? So you say, would I ever do that to a friend? If I was going back and forth with the group chat, would I ever say to my friend, if she said, where do you want to eat? Would I ever say, I make decisions all day? I mean, it's laughable, right? You wouldn't have a friend anymore. She'd be like, fuck you, me too. Like, what? Like, what are you saying? But people will say this to their husband. Anyway, so if you would not say it to a friend, you shouldn't say it to your spouse. But the woman should be working on her own levels of irritability, right? Because she could also say, sweetheart, choose whatever you want, literally, and I'll be fine with it. But, she wasn't, to her credit, in that situation, she wasn't really able to say that because he kept on bombarding her with the questions, which makes her completely tapped out. Because the guy's got to think, would I do this with a friend? Would I keep on offering up other suggestions? If I said, do you want to get Chinese? And the guy said no, I would just wait for him to suggest something else. I wouldn't keep on coming up with other shit. I'd be like, what? Why would he even say no to Chinese? That's weird. Like, who would say no? Like, if you say to a guy, if you're a guy and you say to a guy friend, do you want to meet up at this bar for a beer? If they say no, that would be like so strange. You know, it would be, it's bizarre. You know, unless it's like very far away from them or something. But overall, when a friend, especially a guy, would say to you, do you want to do X? Yeah, like unless you have like a competing event or a real reason, then it's just yes. Same as with women and their friends, right? So the point being is that the guy has to think, would I continue to annoy a friend by saying, what about Chinese? What about sushi? What about Italian? No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't do that. I would assume this person does not want to eat with me. Or I would happily wait for them to suggest something else, depending on the tone of their initial refusal. And why am I bombarding the woman, my wife, with questions? It isn't just about dinner, of course. This goes into everything. Do you want me to hang this here or here? Do you think it looks right here? Do you think that this looks okay? Do you think this? Do you think that? What do you think I should do about this? Do you think now, by the way, if you ask her for like kind of deep advice, something that feels like it's a compliment to her. Like, what do you think I should do about this situation with my subordinate at work? Great. That makes her feel good. That's something that I suggest people do in couples counseling. Actually ask her something that makes her realize that you respect her intelligence and who she is as a person. Like you're actually struggling with a real thing that matters, something that could be the plot line of a television, show, and not like, should I wear this shirt or that shirt? Just like because they're in the room, or should I, or the Chinese or sushi thing. Or what do you think I should do about that this Tupperware is broken? Well, shit, I don't know. Buy another one. Fix it. Figure it out. So those low level almost, it's like a tick to ask questions at that level. It's like nothing meaningful. It's just literally like, it feels to the woman like, I cannot deal with my life without getting approval about every single thing that I do. And or it can sometimes be associated with ADHD. Almost the guy's so bored, doing like menial shit, walking around the house. That's not exciting because the ADHD brain, could refer back to all my ADHD podcasts, is chronically understimulated. So it's almost like he keeps himself awake by making these like kind of silly little interactions that are very bothersome to her. But to him, it's better than just being in silence because silence is so boring. So that's another possibility. But to her, it feels like you could ask anybody this. You could figure it out yourself in 1 second. You're just talking to hear yourself talk. And sometimes he is. So it's either ADHD frequently or it's anxiety, as I've been saying. It's the anxiety of doing something wrong. And it's this illusion that there is enough questions that you can ask that will make you sure that you have done the right thing. But isn't it scary, though? Because the more questions you ask, the more I'm telling you could be assured that she's annoyed. So whereas, if you don't ask questions, maybe you'll do something wrong. But if you ask a million questions, you're definitely doing something wrong. So how about instead leaning into the idea that you need to work on your core confidence and the relationship overall? And you can always have a meta conversation. So you could say something like, after you have the dinner conversation, you could say, man, that conversation did not make me feel very good, right? I mean, I don't want to keep having those. Maybe we should just figure out like that whoever, on the alternate days of the week, I pick dinner and the other days you pick dinner. What do you think about that? That is a question. But it's a different kind of question. It's a question designed to have no more questions. It would be like a question saying, how about I take over the kitchen renovation so that we don't have to ask each other shit about it all the time? And that is like a question to stop. You're allowed to ask questions to stop questions, but you're not allowed to ask questions that are endless about like random shit that are going to continue in perpetuity. And so it's kind of like you can ask a meta question. And so in therapy, we ask a lot of meta questions. It's like, oh, why did you just think about that? Instead, so a guy will tell me about like Thanksgiving with his mother when he was 5 years old. And I'm not going to be like, what color was the tablecloth? Oh, yeah? What else? What other side dish did you have? Oh, what color were the walls? Oh, so she was 39 at that time or 38? No, you're not going to ask stupid shit like that, honestly. It would be irritating, the same irritating as the wife feels if he does that. I would say, why are you telling me this story now? That's a meta question. So we could be like, well, gee, I don't know. I guess we were talking about my kids and I was thinking about the memories I want to make and maybe I'm not making the same memories, right? So then that's like an interesting conversation because we had a meta question, a question about why we're having so many questions or a question about why we're talking about what we're talking about. Those are good for your relationship. That's the opposite of small talk. The constant small talk level questions, either to just make something to talk about, and of course, it amplifies that there's nothing deep to talk about. If you ask like a million things in a row about like the type of groceries that you should get, at the end of it, if your wife is a deeper thinker, she's like, oh my God, we have no relationship at all. All we talk about is what cereal to buy, right? And so you want to get away from the constant compulsive small talk. And also you want to get away from the idea that somebody's going to die if you do something she doesn't like. And I have lots of podcasts and posts about this. The most popular was Stop Caring So Much What Your Wife Thinks. And if you are obsessed with this idea that that there's a way to avoid any censure, any disapproval at all from your wife, there's not. Unless, of course, you guys work on that directly as part of a stated dynamic that is being directly and openly worked on in or out of couples counseling. Because maybe she does shoot down literally everything you say. Maybe you could fix it by not saying so much stuff, by not constantly asking her questions and instead sweeping in with confident momentum. And I have many posts about that idea. You could Google that, Dr. Psych Mom, confident momentum. And I have a podcast about it too, I think. But if you can't, and so let's say you say, oh, honey, I'm going to cook something tonight. You're going to love it. She's like, why? I never love anything that you cook. Well, then she's a bitch, right? And so right, she's being mean. She's being mean. Did you do something first? Maybe. It's chicken and egg in long-term relationships. But what we do know is that her response was not nice. So in that case, you would say, well, that wasn't nice. What's wrong? Like, why would you say that? I think you will, like what I eat. And if not, is it worth being mean to me about, But so you could have the meta conversation. But the reality is most women will not say that. Most women will say, okay, cool. And they'll eat what they like of it and they won't eat otherwise. And if you see her rummaging in the pantry after dinner, it meant it wasn't a very good dinner. But most people are well-intentioned and do not go out to hurt each other. There's not these victim-perpetrator dynamics in most relationships. And if you perceive that it is extremely risky to cook something without asking for your wife's approval on all ingredients first, it is likely that you're annoying the shit out of her and that she feels that you are a kind of demi-child that she has to, an anxious child even, not even just a child that's kind of easy to deal with, but a difficult child, a child that constantly needs to be reassured and given constant praise and feedback. Otherwise, they're too scared to do anything. And that is not a sexy dynamic, not one that is going to be getting you laid. All right, I hope this gave you a lot to think about. If you struggle with over asking questions, this would be a good one to think about for both people. Both partners could listen to this one. And I will talk to y'all soon. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.